It's 8:31, so I want to go ahead and jump right in. And I would like to thank our friends at Gunster, Joanna and Ronald, for joining us this morning to talk about the upcoming redistricting that's happening. For those of us in this space, you know how important this is in terms of our voting population and what that looks like. I live in Lake County, and I remember when I first moved out this way, and there was the redistricting that allowed for now Representative Val Demings to actually get her seat because they redrew the lines and it took out a portion of Lake County, which was also held by Congressman Dan Webster. So, you know, it's super important for our elections, and I'm glad we have some subject matter experts in this to kind of explain the importance of this in terms of our voting and what this looks like. And without further ado, I'm going to try to share my screen and pull up the PowerPoint. Their bios are in the chat. I put the links to their bios in the essence of time so we don't have to read through them, but they both come to us with years of experience in this space. And I believe you both are in Tallahassee, correct? God bless your heart. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. And Kyle, if it doesn't come up, oh, look at you, you did it.
There we go.
I was going to say, if it doesn't work, it's not a big deal.
I did it. Yay.
You did it. Good job.
And I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just want to give Chris Snow a quick shout out, even though I know he's not with us this morning. We appreciate him offering this opportunity to us to speak with you this morning. I know that y'all are already a pretty savvy group and probably, you know, have a good background on redistricting, but just at a high level, we'll just start with a little background. This is the process that we undergo every 10 years. The legislature redraws the districts based on the new census data that comes out for all 120 House districts, all 40 Senate districts, and the U.S. congressional seats. And so we do this, of course, to adjust for uneven population growth rates in different parts of the state. And because we do have a little bit of a time constraint this morning, we'll focus today on just the state house races. We could probably spend hours on all of these topics, especially the congressional seats and what could happen there. But so we'll talk about just the state seats, and then maybe if there's time, we can get into the congressional process. That is going to be very interesting because based on the new census data, Florida is going to get one new seat in Congress. So we'll be at 28 now. And the breakdown in those seats, we've got 16 Republican members of Congress in Florida and 11 Democratic members of Congress. So the expectation based on the state's growth is that that new seat is going to end up somewhere in the I-4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando. There's been a lot of news stories about that. And, there's a lot of data around Congressman Darren Soto's seat and how much his particular district has grown, and the fact that it is becoming very quickly a majority Hispanic seat. So lots of interesting data out there, and, us political geeks could really get into that conversation. But let's just talk overall about our Florida resident population. We increased from the year 2010 to 2020 to 21,538,187 people. We were at 18,801,310 people. I think it's safe to say that the expectation that we were going to grow even more than that was certainly impacted by COVID and by, potentially the shift in people's thinking about what state they wanted to live in full time, or people's ability to move. And so our growth, while it outpaced the nation's at 14.6%, the nation's growth was 7.4%. I think that a lot of people back in 2010 would have told you that we were going to grow even more than this. And so while the number is very strong for Florida, it didn't quite meet the expectation of what some experts anticipated. So the timeline for redistricting, what's happening right now is that the House and Senate are getting ready to meet in their fall committee meetings. They'll start that in September. They've announced their committee members for the chairs of the redistricting committees. The Senate, has a little bit smaller grouping of those members, and then the House has got 3 different committees. They've got one that'll focus on the congressional seats, and then the state legislative seats, and then the overall redistricting committee. And these committees will start during the fall. As I said, they'll receive input from the public, and then they'll have final map approval to be expected during the session, which starts in January and ends in March, of course, this year. So at this moment, there's not really a great place to go and see the current data, but the House and Senate plan to have a joint redistricting website. They announced that in the past week. The Senate currently has info available to the public on their old redistricting site. So if you want to look at some of the past data, that's probably the best place to go. And that website is flsenate.gov with one of those slashes, session/redistricting. That's a good resource. It'll give you a lot of the historical data, but it's not going to give you just yet what they're starting to put out for potential new information. And then just to kind of tell you what's happening for your Seminole County delegation, your members on the redistricting committees, you have 2 House members that scored some of those prized seats. Representative Scott Plakin is going to be one of the members of the Congressional Committee, and Representative Goff Marcil is going to be on the overall redistricting committee. So kind of a nice assignment for a Democratic member, I have to say. Rep. Smith and Senator Broder did not score seats on any of the redistricting committees at this point. So looking at Seminole County seats specifically, you've got, of course, 3 House districts and 1 Senate district. And one of your House districts, District 30, it's not included in the PowerPoint presentation maps because it's considered a leans Democratic seat. It's not a swing seat. All of your other seats are swing seats, as y'all know. So I didn't put it in the map. It's also interesting to me, it's your only Democratic seat and democratically elected seat, and your only female member of the legislature. So just wanted to put that out there. Representative Goff Marcil will term out in 2026 if she stays all of her terms in the House. And so that's a seat we won't focus on in our conversation this morning. But looking what's up on the screen, that is a high-level map of Senate District 9, Senator Broder's seat. It is definitely a swing seat. As you all know, there was a lot of speculation about who would end up winning that seat when he ran for it. Certainly some controversy surrounding the win, and we don't have time to get into that one today either, but that one's an interesting conversation as well. And then if Senator Broder stays in his seat for the entire amount of time that he can serve in the Senate, he would be out in 2028, I believe. So looking at some of the details on Senate District 9, in 2016, the registrations were, fairly strong Republican, 38.4%, Democrat, 33.2%, and then NPA registrations were at 28.4%. Now, in 2020, in comparison, your Republican registrations have gone down to 35.9%. Your Democratic registrations have gone up 34.1%. And then your folks that register as NPAs has gone up as well to 30%. And I know y'all know that those numbers aren't always as important because what you register doesn't necessarily always indicate what you do when you get in the ballot box. However, the performance that we've tracked over the last 3 election cycles has certainly indicated that the NPA increase and the Democratic registration increase is trending in a way that's gonna certainly possibly make this seat a little bit more blue than red. In 16, the performance was pretty strong Republican, R+2. In 18, it was even. So that was a very close year. And then in 20, this seat performed for the Democrats by a +2 margin. So you're really seeing the blue grow. If you look at this map, up around the Sanford area, that was a little less blue in 2016. And then by the time we reached 2020, that whole area up in the north, all around Sanford, went from kind of a light blue, medium blue, to a very dark blue. And then further south, down from Sanford, you started to see a lot more what we would call blue districts. So what happens in 2022 will definitely be very interesting, especially if these lines stay very similar. And y'all know when they get down into the details, they're going block by block in these districts to draw the lines. And so moving lines through neighborhoods and through different communities can have a huge impact. If y'all want to go to the next slide, we'll see what district that one is, because I can't remember. Probably 28. Yep, 28. So that's Rep. David Smith's seat. It's a swing seat, as we've already discussed, and he'll be out in 26 if he serves all of his terms. This seat has a lot of Sanford in it as well, as you can see on the screen. It's very similar trends as to what we saw in Senator Broder's district, with the 16 registrations being higher on the Republican side and lower on the Democrat and NPA side. 2020 comes along and those Republican registrations are down to 36.6%, Democrats at 33.8%, and NPAs at 29.6%. And so then we saw the performance trend the same way that we saw the performance trend in Senator Broder's district. And if you want to proceed to the next slide, you can see that in Representative Plakin's district, where we know his wife will be running for his seat. So you've got some continuity there in the name, even though he's terming out. Again, another swing district that used to be fairly red that is now much more solidly performing for the Democrats. So I have talked a lot, and I want to give Ron an opportunity to share some information with you all as well. So I'm going to pause for a minute and let Ron have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. So a couple of things to just keep in mind, and I know you all probably know this already. The players are in who runs the maps. Essentially, you have the governor, the Supreme Court, the House and the Senate, and clearly the public plays a role in that as well in terms of participating in the hearing. So on the congressional side, the governor has the ability to veto maps, right? Unlike the House and Senate maps. Once those are drawn, then the Supreme Court has the ability to basically discount those maps, and they could have to draw the maps in essence themselves, right? And we had that happen after the 2012 drawing of the maps. You will recall that there was the Fair Districts amendment that passed. And so that requires that the maps have to be contiguous, they have to be compact, they have to have equal population, and they can't sort of arbitrarily favor a party or disfavor a party and they can't diminish the right of a minority to participate in the process as a group. So so post the drawing of the maps in 2012, there were several lawsuits, and after that, that's when we had the Supreme Court step in and in essence help redraw some of these maps. So we are under that current regime right now. The question is, do we expect to see something similar this time around? Now, you will notice that we are probably close to where the Democrats were when they lost the control of the House and the Senate, right? Where you have some cannibalism that begins to happen, right? In terms of being able to maintain seats and to keep people in seats. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this redistricting process this time around, particularly with the rules as they are laid out in terms of the 4 issues that we've talked about already. And so members, I served on a redistricting committee last time, and it's interesting that you're looking at the maps and you're going through the process, and every member is trying to protect either their seat and trying to keep the numbers in a way that the seat could be winnable for themselves or someone like them, right? And so that's going to be something that's going to be top of mind of each one of the members who's participating in this process. And then I'm pretty sure there's going to be lawsuits anyway when it's done, right? Last time, if you will recall, there were questions about the information and who was involved in the process and so forth. And so we'll see if the legislature is a better actor in terms of transparency through the process this time around. I will do a little bit of personal editorial on this. I think we are all served better when districts are balanced, right? Everybody gets a fair shake in the process when districts are balanced to the population, to the actual population that is that a district is made up of. So there's a couple of other things that just so that you will be familiar with, and those are 3 terms: packing, stacking, and cracking, right? Packing is basically packing a district so that it is stacked with or packed with monolithic voters, right? And so people sometimes think, oh, that's great. But when you do that, you sort of reduce the political power of the district. So you can either get discounted, right, as a district because they believe that everybody in that district is essentially the same. And so therefore, when you need support for certain things, then people don't tend to go to that member. And so it reduces that member's political power. And very often, districts that are packed are high performing for one party, and so they're beneficial in certain races, but may not be as effective in statewide races, depending upon the candidates that are out there. So that's one aspect. Then you have stacking, where you have combining low income, less educated people in the same district, and therefore making it less performing. And so that's something that is often talked about. And then cracking is the opposite. Like cracking, you have a higher performing district, usually of minority voters, and you sort of break that district apart so that you lose the political power of that minority group. So those terms are important for this purpose. You will have entities like the NAACP the Urban League, and other minority groups that will pay attention to how the maps are drawn and could challenge the maps based upon those, simply based upon how they play up to the stacking, cracking, and packing components of the data in the map. So those are some things that I think are important for all of us to keep in mind. It's going to be an exciting season in terms of redistricting. And so I think we're going to be off to the races very soon in terms of this. And I love redistricting, so it's going to be fun to watch.
Well, I thank you guys both for your expertise on this. We'll open it up for any questions anybody has at this time. I know that our friends have to leave us soon. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to jump in and ask?
I got one. I mean, I'm not a member of the committee, but I do have a question. You touched on a little bit earlier, you're seeing a big shift from the idea before it was Democrat, Republicans, and you kind of drew based on that. Oh, we have X amount of Republicans in the district, X amount of Democrats in the district. With this new third, MPAs are really almost a third of the voting population now. So are they going to start more focusing on consumer data? Like you said before, just because they're registered one way doesn't mean anything. MPA doesn't necessarily mean they're really an independent. There could be Republican leaning MPAs or Democrat leaning MPAs. How are they going to start trying to identify those, and what kind of impact is that going to have on redistricting going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that that's something that they wish they could pinpoint, right? Because before, as you mentioned, yeah, if the district was 55% R or D, then you kind of knew exactly where you were going to be. Now you're at a third each way, pretty much. And I think when the people who are on the committees or the parties are going to engage in trying to extrapolate data on the performance of the raw numbers, right? So if you have the district that's a third, and a third, based on the outcome of the last election, they're going to try to extrapolate, okay, it went 50, 51 or 49.3 for this person and 48.2 for this person. We know exactly what happens with the R's and the D's, right? To a certain degree, we can make an assumption there, and then they're going to try to do the same type of assumptions on the independents and work it out that way. But it's not exact science, and so they're going to be, to a certain degree, flying blind on that aspect of it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Well, I don't want to keep you guys. I know we were trying to end at about 8:50 for you all in your schedule. So thank you so much for going a few minutes over and sharing that information. I remember my first year in the legislature, and I worked for Senator Brise, and we were in the House, and we were at the Capitol for hours just watching them draw maps, and it was very contentious, interesting to say the least.
Right.
But it was very, very interesting. And they redrew then Congresswoman Corinne Brown's district, and it was crazy looking from Jacksonville to Orlando. Like, it was just, you were like, what in the Sam Hill is this? So I agree. It's going to be an interesting one this year. And thank you so much for taking your time this morning and speaking with us and giving us this helpful information.